Mr. Barry Morgan, and the president, the Global Securities Bank, the president, the CEO. He came from Australia. And the second gentleman, Mr. Everybody know about gold beer bond, gold with the free Vietnam beer bond. The owner in the gold mining in Chile, Mr. Gary Peace, the CSI AG company, and he's the president and sole owner. I would like to introduction for our staff cabinet member here in this table, the National Council members.
Well, let me know. I talk loud enough generally, I don't need the microphone. But I thank you again for the very gracious reception, and it's good to see everybody back. A lot of familiar faces. I've met the gentleman before, board members. Tony and I have been discussing this for quite some time. Mr. Morgan's been very gracious. He's becoming a member of CSI AG, and as an investment into the gold mining world, Mr. Morgan has, we've transacted an agreement on an island, 710 acres, off, it's called Clairview Island, off the east coast, it's the east coast of Australia. It's a very rare bird because it's title free. It's a fee and simple, as they call it in America, where you hold the title to the property. It is not a leased island. You will own the island. It's quite substantial. It's got some elevation to it. It was bought by Mr. Morgan a few years back for a high-end resort, which after Mr. Morgan's been in the development world for quite so many years, but he found this island after searching quite extensively, and now after our joining forces, and he sees the strength that has been brought forth with the gold mining in Chile, and our direction down there, and the support from the Vietnamese community, and what our next step is to start development down there. Mr. Morgan's come on board and said, what can I do to help you out? I said, well, the island is something that I can use. Tony's been kicking me in the backside every last few months to tell me, I want the island. We can do things with the island. And I said, well, Tony, if you can't dig gold in it, I don't want to mess too much with it. But the island is something that can support the community and help our efforts in working with the government of Free Vietnam. Tony and I have discussed this extensively. I've asked and talked with Mr. Morgan. Mr. Morgan said, most definitely, I'm more than willing to give to or transact an agreement to CSI AG ownership of the island. As we speak, I brought some documentation down here today. Mr. Morgan will be able to tell you too that the attorneys are, because of the procedures from Australia to Vanuatu and through into CSI AG, it takes some time. But the lawyers are working on it. Mr. Morgan's given them the direction, and as of right now, and I think Mr. Morgan can reinforce this, but, well, excuse me, as soon as Tony signs the documentation, CSI AG and the government of Free Vietnam will be in a joint venture effort to develop the island off the coast of Australia. And with that development will become ownership. We've negotiated and worked out an agreement that as the investment into the island and the support of the island in development, the island will be eventually turned over to, with full title of ownership, to the government of Free Vietnam, and through Tony's negotiations and representation. The island is an entity of strength with being in that region that we're looking at other properties out there through Australia as well as into the South Pacific for development, not only for the Vietnamese community, but for additional income, the crops or whatever we might, cattle ranches in Australia and in some other extensive directions of bringing a community from the Vietnamese as well as the involvement from global security and CSIAG with their financial and collateral support to get extensive growth and support from that direction and that geographical direction. The island will be owned by the government of Free Vietnam. And that's my direction. Mr. Morgan understands what the position of CSI is, and it's another instrument that CSIAG has lent to the government of Free Vietnam, not only bearer bonds that have been quite involved and quite extensive out into the world, but this is another supporting entity that CSIAG is trying to bring forth to give more support to the government of Free Vietnam. Again, on the island, Tony's the construction end of that, and I'm more of I'll put the money in place and get the titles in place, and those should be, again, he'll sign the agreements today, hopefully, and Mr. Morgan, in the near future, will have everything sent back over from Australia. So we're probably in an area of 3 to 6 weeks. Everything's been done on paper. It's just taken it takes a procedure through the courts and through the logistics of the title transfer to get everything brought back over here so we can present everything in full with the transfer from Capricorn to CSI, and Government of Free Vietnam's joint venture movement. The bank, Global Security Bank, is an entity that we're proposing to bring an investment or groups of investors in as a way to protect their money. Global Security is a fully A-rated bank. It's an entity that we are going to use as a lending source. And Mr. Morgan, and this is something that we have discussed into last night, me and Mr. Morgan, and Tony received some of the updated and changed the paperwork late yesterday afternoon. Mr. Morgan is stepping down from president and kind of the self-supporter of Global Bank, and has stepped back and said, you need, with the collateral base that you have, you need full direction and full control over a banking entity. With the government of Free Vietnam, they need a central system to start, and this is something that Tony and I have discussed for 3 years, is a central bank or central system of banking where everybody could be protected and be assured that their money that they're putting in some bank somewhere is going to be there in the next 20, 30, or 130 years. The government of Free Vietnam needs a central system. This bank will and can be that system. Mr. Morgan has stepped away. Tony has stepped to the table. As of right now, Tony and myself are the 2 chief senior directors of the bank that we are proposing in Vanuatu as Global Security Bank. The bank, again, to throw a little bit more support, I've brought down a proposed business plan that I would like copies run, and everybody should get a good read there. It'll explain what our directions are. It'll explain where CSI has, again, pledged another $300 million in gold reserves to the bank. And that $300 million in gold reserves are being in Texas as we speak. I signed the papers and sent them back over to him last night. Is they are putting an insurance wrap around that commitment, so when we go into the bank not only the first supporting money that it's needed by our agreements and our contracts, but the bank will be a bank by the end of the year, the year 99. It should have over a $300 million base, collateral base, in cash or cashable reserves in the bank. So when you step back into the government, the Vietnamese, when you step back into Vietnam, there will be money supporting the movement to step back in and take back over your country.